expensive game of whack-a-mole, so probably not in the best interest of the client. Now you probably might guess what the website we were talking about in question was, and it was in fact WikiLeaks. Now, obviously, it's inconceivable now that you probably go after WikiLeaks, on a legal basis. But back then, you were using investigators to try and find out who was behind this, and bearing in mind that this wasn't really something that anyone really knew about at the time. Something obviously that's the decision we made then. Of course, as I said, it was 2008. This is kind of before smartphones, before Twitter had really taken off, before the cloud, and at a time where only The Simpsons had actually managed to predict that Donald Trump would be president. So, this is fair some time. But anyway, coming back to the reputation side of things. It was very eye-opening, obviously, this experience, kind of the firm in the online reputation management space. It was a good education for us. There are kind of three key points that let's talk about in terms of learning that we got from it. I think something that it's good to share. Number one was trying to judge the tipping point between when it's sensible to take legal action versus what will actually happen if you do take legal action, and could it make it worse, which is obviously the case in this instance. Obviously, trying to go after WikiLeaks after the documents had already been published was a little bit too late. So perhaps instead, at the time the bank, our clients, had become kind of aware of the ex-employee having these documents, it would be better to actually go after them at that point rather than waiting for the kind of bad event to happen, so to speak. The second kind of area that's quite important to take away is having public positions ready for kind of any legal action. Now, kind of obviously not all legal action is public, and even cases where things can be anonymised or cases are just being heard in private. That's not to say that things won't get leaked kind of in the internet age, people won't find out. So in a way, sometimes having kind of statements prepared, even in an anodyne form, can actually be quite proactive. Simple as we're taking this legal action to protect our family's privacy or our customers' privacy. It might not work, but we're using all the remedies available to do what's right. Now, effectively, what you're doing in this instance is you're kind of hiding in plain sight. You're not saying we're trying to take this action secretly, which can obviously make people a little bit more excited about the story. You're kind of taking control of it in some way. And the third area is understanding technology. Now, obviously, Johannes is going to come and talk about this a little bit later, and I can't profess to know the ins and outs, but you need to know kind of who you're dealing with, and what the implications are of what you're dealing with. But again, as I said, Johannes will talk about this a bit later. Now, since that 2008 case, so 9 years ago, we've kind of developed our skills as a firm, and we look at these issues somewhat differently now. And as I said, kind of the most important lesson was kind of knowing who you're dealing with, but also being able to act quickly and have an early warning system in place to make sure that actually there is something that you can do. So to bring this kind of full circle, I'm just going to talk through another example of something that happened quite recently on a case that I was working on, which just shows kind of the way we've adapted in working online, and also just how clients need to adapt yourselves. I was working on a case which involved clients who were potentially subject to a hack. Learning kind of our lessons from the past, we had alerts in place which notified us that there was some activity on a website called Pastebin. Pastebin is a website where hackers often kind of dump a lot of data or other users. Now, the client in question had come under increased scrutiny for some of their business activities in Africa and was getting quite a lot of media attention anyway, and that's something that we were dealing with on a day-to-day basis. The threats of obviously a hack are nothing new, and companies and clients often face this, whether or even professional services firms. But the real concern was the group that was actually targeting our clients, and that group was called Anonymous, which again I'm sure that many of you have heard of. Now, as powerful as a Schillings legal letter might be, wasn't really going to work to write to them and say, sorry chaps, do you mind not hacking our clients? Because let's be honest, I was probably going to put a target on the back of the firm, and also, perhaps even me, myself, if I was sending the letter like that. So we had to think, how did we have to deal with this, and how do we do this in a slightly different way? So the first thing we did is we sought to actually confirm the legitimacy of this threat. It wasn't actually just hacking Anonymous, or was it some kids in their basement who were just saying, right, we're going to associate ourselves with that group. So this was done by our cybersecurity director at the time, delving onto the dark web. Dark web is kind of an area which you have to access through a specific browser, and it doesn't have conventional websites that you or I will be able to access, but people like Johannes know their way around it. And so what he did was he managed to find this group on certain forums, have a chat with them, and actually saw this threat is legitimate. Now, while this was ongoing, we of course notified our clients. We're having conversations with them, with their IT, in-house IT teams, just to make sure that everything was secure. And in doing so, we actually shut down the client's website just temporarily to make sure that everything was up to speed. At the same time, we continued to have these conversations with the hackers from Anonymous. And what had transpired is they'd actually got slightly the wrong end of the stick and didn't really, and were targeting our clients for the wrong reason. We kind of delicately pointed them in the right direction by giving them an example article of what was really going on, which coincidentally was something we had altered using unconventional legal means as well. Funnily enough, at this point, they actually accepted they had got the wrong end of the stick, but that wasn't without taking credit for actually shutting down the website, which was something that they weren't responsible for at all. Obviously, this was still a huge win because the client had lost nothing, and these budding hackers had got away with their pride. So that was kind of important in that sense, being a bit pragmatic in your approach. This kind of example really illustrates for us the need to kind of act quickly, kind of be a bit dynamic in the approach you take, and don't necessarily follow the conventional legal routes that we're all used to, and why we've adapted as a practice. I'm now just going to go on briefly just to talk a little bit about privacy in general before handing over to Johannes. So before kind of giving a couple of tips when it comes to privacy, I just want to take a step back and just talk a little bit about kind of how important it is as a fundamental kind of principle of right. I'm sure all of you have had kind of moments when you might be singing badly in the shower or kind of dancing with your children or your loved ones or playing some game that no one else will understand. Now, of course, this all happens in the privacy of your own home. But if you discovered you were being watched or these precious moments were being shared, there's that question: how would you feel? How does that really fundamentally make you feel? And it turns out there is actually a whole genre of YouTube videos which focus on this kind of experience and focus on actually exposing people and seeing them realise when they realise they're not actually alone, and seeing that kind of feeling of shame and humiliation. And it's in that sense that it's something that you think about those experiences. This is something that I'm willing to do only if no one else is watching. So I've borrowed this example from Pulitzer-winning American lawyer and journalist Glenn Greenwald. He's done a lot of reports on kind of surveillance and was at the forefront when Ed Snowden was leaking all of the documents that he got access to some years ago. Now he's spoken all over the world. This is Glenn Greenwald about how audiences feel about kind of the need for privacy and what's important about privacy. And intriguingly, a question he always gets is, if I don't really worry about privacy, or a statement he always gets is, I don't worry about privacy because I've got nothing to hide. And it's at this point, what he often does is he gets out a pen and writes down his email address and says, email me the passwords to all of your email accounts, not just the nice, respectable ones in their own names, but all of them. Because I want to be able to troll through just what you're doing online, read what I want to read, publish whatever I find interesting. After all, if you're not a bad person, you're doing nothing wrong. You should hide nothing. And the typical response to obviously this is actually, right, maybe I do want to protect my privacy, maybe it's more important than I actually think, even if you do have nothing to hide. So at Schillings, we're very passionate about privacy and proud to be involved in some of the leading cases in this area of law. And for us, there's kind of 5 key components of privacy that we tend to focus on. Physical, financial, commercial, social, and digital. And for us, the key is not to look just at one aspect in isolation, but to look at all aspects together. Because if you are weak in one of them, you can be potentially vulnerable overall. Now, I'm just going to talk a little bit about a couple of the dimensions, but obviously feel free to ask questions about privacy more generally as we go on. So the first is financial privacy. Financial privacy is sometimes pitted unfairly against transparency. And of course, there's various initiatives that are designed to increase overall levels of transparency of the financial system, to aid, putting sort of terrorist financing, money laundering, tax evasion, and of course these are all very laudable. The problem comes when so-called activists or whistleblowers actually put it upon themselves to aggressively pursue this transparency agenda, but in the process actually harm people's rights of privacy. So they can inflate those two areas. Everyone in the room should be acutely aware of how the Panama leaks impacted their clients and the offshore industry in general. And if you think about how big this actual loss of confidential data was, it's quite staggering. It's about 11.5 million documents, dating back to the 1970s, and 400 journalists over 80 countries kind of delving through all of these. And I'm sure as you can imagine, this was an extremely busy time for our clients and that reputation in the privacy space, and they were obviously very worried about being singled out by the media. So in terms of actually trying to protect financial privacy, before kind of the issue arises, one of the key solutions is to know where that information actually resides. And there are two parts to this. First, it can be what information is in the public domain, on registers, company records, etc. And secondly, also information that advisors actually hold. Do you hold a lot of confidential information? And actually looking at yourself and saying, are we vulnerable to being hacked or any kind of leaks, whether it's employees or otherwise? If one of our clients, for example, was contacted by a newspaper about their tax affairs, it's very important to know exactly where the information has come from. Is it already in the public domain? Is it not? Because often a newspaper will actually be fishing around for confirmation of material which may not be in the public domain, but it's actually informing their knowledge. And so we need to know, our role is really to make sure the newspapers remain honest, and they can't draw any inferences which are substantiated. And by having that kind of approach, you can actually make sure that a lot of the material when it comes to the financial space is actually kept out of the press. So it's not a case of there's nothing that you can actually do. The second element of privacy I'm just going to briefly touch upon is social privacy. And by this, I mean whether it's your kind of business or personal relationships. And we've seen it time and time again that often clients or large corporations are dragged into the press either by association with others or perhaps what they're doing. And to take one example of social privacy, I find it quite kind of staggering the number of high-profile people we tend to work with who have no idea even who's coming in and out of their home. They don't have a system to know whether there's subcontractors or if it's the gardeners, whether there's any agreements in place that should have these people in the home. And an example we always kind of go back to is that we did a case for a high-profile musician who had private photos of her wedding, which she'd never sold to the press. And there was a wedding album lying around in her front room, a coffee table, and an unscrupulous guest just took it upon himself to take photos of these photos of the wedding photos, and then went on and sold it to the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail, what they did was they hung on to those for 4 years, and then she got divorced and then decided to make it the front page of their newspaper. So you can never be too careful. And when it comes to things like this, it can be at its most basic level, just considering non-disclosure agreements with people who have access to the property in your homes. And even if it's not going to be necessarily enforced, it just puts people's minds in focus. They do have these obligations, and they'd be more aware of actually what they hear in their house, spreading those stories, or as I said, selling it to the Daily Mail. So those are just some kind of initial pointers on social privacy. Also, I could go on to talk about all the other ones, but so I'm going to hand over to Johannes, who's going to give you kind of contextualize this a little bit more and talk about hacking generally and the dangers that talk about.
Yeah, thank you. I'm quite aware you all want to go to the bar, so do I. I'm just coming in from Dubai, so I'm ridiculously tired and I need a whiskey. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 main things, and I think the most important message I have: don't believe the hype. I don't know which jobs you're in, I don't know which organizations you work for, but I bet £10 that all of your organizations within the last 5 days and in the next 2 weeks are going to be approached by a cybersecurity company that tries to sell you something. I bet a tenner, whoever wants to stand up for that, it's completely fine. You have my contact. Thing is, that's all good and nice, and there are a lot of good security companies out there, but I want you to think about one thing. And that is, very, very importantly, get your basics right. The internet is around since the 60s, the internet we have now hasn't changed since the early 90s. The technology we used to surf to Facebook is around since the early 90s. Now you can wonder why something like WannaCry that happened on Friday, this ransomware attack that started to encrypt your personal data, how can that actually happen? And this is quite easy. Obviously, a fancy software solution for several hundred thousands of pounds will probably protect you and will add some value. I'm not questioning that. There are amazing tools out there. The problem is, and that example, people are not doing their homework. WannaCry is based on vulnerability that got patched by Microsoft on the 14th of March 2017 and was rated on the highest vulnerability level of 10. Best practice advice says patch that within 5 days. So fix the vulnerability within 5 days. People didn't do their homework. All this outcry at the NHS in England, well, they are kind of special anyway, but at the bigger corporations could have been fixed if they had done their homework. Patching solution costs you around 15 to 20,000 pounds. The damage you have now is much, much higher. And we always say, when it comes to hacking, a lot of people push back on costs, and then they call us when something happened, like on Friday, and I tell them, I told you so 3 weeks ago. And you just think about what you're going to spend on remediating, on your reputational loss, and also just to rebuild the trust of your customers, of your clients, etc. So there are, I said, 3 things. The one is the threat. What is the threat? What is a hacker? I think very importantly, it's important to understand there are several kinds of hackers. And to just very quickly give you a run through, we separate them in script kiddies. This is the 15-year-old that sits at home, has some very, very basic knowledge, and all he can do is go after this high-level attacks that are out at the moment because someone finds a vulnerability that basically requires you to push one button. We have opportunists that just notice something is wrong. The internet is a big playground for nerds like me. We look around, we find a vulnerability, we find something through automatic scans, and they just go for it. They probably don't even want to cause damage. Sam mentioned activists, they're getting bigger and bigger out there. The insider threat, never forget about it. And then we have professional cyber criminals. And I recently had an investigation. I look at some log files that are really the boring files, black screen, green characters, thousands of lines long. And we noticed the suspicious activity always stops at a certain time at the day. And I don't get the time zones right anymore, but we figured out it was 5:30 in Shanghai. Every day at 5:30 in Shanghai, the activity stopped. And we wondered why. And then we also figured out no activity Saturdays and Sundays. Cyber criminals by now work 9 to 5, probably a little bit longer sometimes, like we all do, but it's a 9 to 5 job. They get paid, they go home in the evening, they have kids at home, they want to buy Christmas presents, etc. Cyber criminals have jobs like you and I. Now, what I get asked quite often, where do you learn hacking? And that's the other important thing to remember. When I started around 2000, causing havoc at school, changing the backgrounds of all teachers' laptops to very inappropriate pictures, I had to go to the library or to surf on the internet, and back then Google was just starting, I think it was 3 years old, so you found some stuff, but not a lot. These days, what you're going to do, you see it? Yeah, you go to YouTube, you type in how to hack Windows 10, and then there's, for example, a tool called Metasploit, and there are 130,000 findings. I click on that, video starts, well, after the commercial obviously, because someone has to make money, even if you're not successful with your hack. With my mouse. If I skip this ad, I don't want to bore you too much with that. I'm going to see a lovely video of how to hack a Windows 10 system. This will be successful if someone is not doing their homework, because all of these hacks are based on outdated software, an outdated Acrobat Reader if we have it all installed, outdated Flash, outdated Internet Explorer. That are what these ads are based on. If I can find my mouse. Technology. There it is. So if I go here, you see all magic stuff is happening on the screen, and you just type it in. But again, these are not sophisticated attacks. They are your starting point. They happen because someone didn't do their homework in their IT department. And that is quite important to remember. Thing is, now your next point would be, where do the kids get these tools from? They are all legal. They are available on the internet. Metasploit is developed as a hacking security testing tool. It's open source. I can download it for free. Rapid7.com, who wants to check, is a very, very big security provider, puts this tool out for free on the internet. So you don't need much skills. Now, protect. How can I protect? myself. And because it's quite late, I rather want to give you something home with you and not about how do you protect your application organization. You can ask me about that in a mail. Unfortunately, these days, the most important thing still is passwords. I promise you in 5 years, no one will talk about passwords anymore. That's fine, it's done. You guys have to have different passwords for all your internet services. Now, uppercase, lowercase, special character number. That's bullshit. Forget about it. You're going to write it down, you're going to forget it, you're going to reset your password. It's all crap. Forget about it, please. Think of 4 words not related to you. Take an Oxford dictionary, open a page, put your finger in, first word, do that 4 times. Put a dash in between. Remember these 4 words with a dash between every word. You have a secure password. It takes an attacker around 100 years to crack this password if he puts it in a machine that's very powerful and he runs all combinations. If you do the uppercase, lowercase, special character, 1 number, 8 digits long, it takes him 500 years. These 400 years in between doesn't make any difference. We're dead by then, thank God. So, 4 words, dash in between, secure password. Please forget about the other crap. It doesn't work. The second thing is 2-factor authentication. Password is something you know. The 2-factor might be something you have. Your fingerprint, you get a message with a code in there. Please activate that. Google Mail supports it. Facebook supports it. PayPal supports it. It's very easy to activate. You all have a smartphone in your pocket. If you lose your password, and sometimes it's not your fault. LinkedIn got hacked in 2013. Was a gold mine. There were 70 million users on LinkedIn back then. 70 million passwords. And if you think of LinkedIn, you think of your job, which password you're going to use? Yeah, your Windows password at your office computer. It was a gold mine. People that didn't have 2-factor authentication, I just went to their web login for their office emails and just tried. I tried the database and I was successful. With 2-factor authentication, I can be successful, but I don't get the passcode sent to your phone. I don't have your fingerprint to authenticate myself a second time. It is really, really helpful. Do that and you're kind of right in your personal life. The 2 principles, or 3, I want to mention now for your organization is already application patch management. Get your software updated. Your IT team will know how to do it, but kick them. It's a boring task, they forget about it, but it's our main finding. We are always successful with that. Second one, that was shown last Friday, have backups. Because if a ransomware encrypts your data, but your data loss is not older than a day, your problem isn't so big. If your last backup is 3 months old, and your data is encrypted and you don't get it back, you might be tempted to even pay the criminal to just get your data back. Backups, very easy. Last thing, don't put everything on the same network. This ransomware spreads around, jumps from one computer to the next computer to the next computer, also encrypts your backup. So you have an encrypted backup. Congratulations, you don't win anything. Now, data breach. What do you do? This container is there for a reason. Back in the 90s and 80s, everyone that was shipping drugs or weapons illegally on a ship just put them in a sea container, put some half-rotten potatoes on it, and when you drive through the Caribbean or through Africa, and customs comes on board, and they open this container, and the smell of half-off potatoes splashes in your face, you close the container again. No one gonna look. Same is with cyber criminals. They will hide their tracks where no one gonna look. So your IT team has to be able to actually detect a breach. That's quite challenging. The average an attacker stays on your system until he gets noticed. It's around 200 days. Then you notice that you got breached. The attacker might be long gone, he might have sold your data, might have exploited all your customers. The important thing is, if you get breached, you need to know who to contact. And this is not a sales pitch for us, this is more first stage an internal problem. You need to know who's on my data breach team, who's the internal stakeholder, who's the external stakeholder, who do I contact? I quite often get a call, it's always Friday, 4:30, already in the pub or at least thinking about a beer. Someone calls me. And you hear people in the background shouting and screaming and running down the hallway like it's burning because they don't know what to do. And it's quite easy. It happened, you can't change it, you can be annoyed about it, it won't go away. But know who you're going to talk to, know who's on your team. And keep things in mind. This is cybersecurity. By now it's a very human factor. prevention, I forgot to mention that the human firewall is quite important security awareness. But the other thing is, your clients, for example, want answers. And when TalkTalk in the UK got hacked, and this is my last example, and then I'm going to ramp it up and let you go. The biggest cost they had from their security incidents weren't the forensic experts, weren't resetting their systems, wasn't implementing new cybersecurity controls. It was the call center for millions of customers to call in and get their question answered. No one thought about that beforehand. No one thought about how do I set up this call center very, very quickly. People want answers. What happened to my credit card details? Were my personal information at risk? Does my wife knows which dodgy websites I served to? All these questions should be answered. They had no means. They had to set up a call center. Was the biggest cost in their afterwards on their balance sheet, basically, for this data breach. So know how you're going to talk, who you're going to talk to beforehand. With that, I could give you a million examples, and I think my job is actually quite exciting, although my mom doesn't understand what I do. I let you go to the bar. If anyone has any questions, we're going to be around at the bar. Apparently. And there's also our contact details. We have some business cards, so just feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Johannes. Completely different world than the ones we operate in day to day. It's always useful to get a different insight, and it's what if nothing else, it tells us how little we do know, how we need to get expert advice. So that basically is the conclusion of the annual conference. For now, I just want to say a number of thank yous. Firstly, I want to thank all of our speakers today for their wonderful presentations. I know that outside of their daily professional lives, the amount of time and energy goes into presenting these papers is very significant. There's a logistic exercise making sure they go in a number of weeks ahead. So I want to thank each and every one of our speakers for their contribution here today. Secondly, I'd like to thank my committee, STEP Ireland. As I said, this is voluntary work. We do it for, I suppose, for the wider reason of assisting our colleagues and the benefits that we get from the ongoing education ourselves, but it does still demand a significant amount of time and energy on behalf of each of the committee members, and I'd like to acknowledge that. Our committee members this year include Gráinne Duggan, who's our vice chair. In particular, I want to say about Gráinne because the amount of work that she did in this conference was unbelievable. I don't know how she manages to keep her daily practice at the bar going with the amount of work she did over the last couple of weeks to organise this. So thank you, Gráinne. Siobhan Moore is our treasurer, and Tina Kern, our secretary. Also, who wasn't on the committee but had an important impact was Cormac Brown. And then the other committee members, Alison Day, Barry Kennelly, Aileen Cogan, Sandra Mead, Lily McCormick, Mary McKeever, Tracy O'Donnell, Trina Guinness, Jim Rubin, and Andrea McNamara. Apart from the annual conference, as I mentioned, we host our monthly seminars. We have been hosting those in the Marriott Hotel because I think that seems to be the most central for practitioners in Dublin. As I mentioned at the outset, we are very conscious of the fact that we are quite Dublin-centric. We try to solve that issue in two ways. One, we have our videos now written online, so all of our members can go in there onto the STEP website, which you have probably telling me is crap and can be hacked. It'll probably be dysfunctional by the time he does. Yeah, he's already done it. It's probably dysfunctional by the time he finishes his talk. But if you want to find some of the information you missed out on any of those seminars, that's the place to go to. Separately, we are trying to do our outreach program in terms of hosting seminars in conjunction with some of the other bodies. So I mentioned the Southern Royal Association and the Galway Bar Association. We are always receptive to members coming forward with ideas on how we can get out there and impart the knowledge that we have. There's a wealth of information. Sometimes there's nearly too much information. If you're a member of STEP, you're getting the International Digest, you're getting STEP UK, and then you're getting also the Irish domestic stuff. And it's nearly useful, I think, sometimes just to be able to speak to your colleagues at these events as more of a networking opportunity to understand what are the real current issues that are going to have the most impact in terms of our practice. This was a first departure in terms of a relocation to the Gibson. you know, we were over in Ralston out in Stormont for a number of years. We have feedback forms. We'd like to get your feedback on both the actual venue and also in terms of the speakers and any comments that you have in relation to that would be very welcome indeed. So that's it from me. Again, I just want to thank everybody for their contribution and to all our delegates, because without our delegates this year it's actually been very useful because we've grown the number. I think we're growing each year, and you know that does say that there's some volume of success and opportunity at the annual conference. I think the range of speakers makes it a very worthwhile conference to attend to, and it's hugely important that our membership take the time and actually pay the cost, because to run an event like this isn't cheap, and we're in a position to do so with a small profit and continue then to run our education programs on an annual basis because of that. So without further ado, just to say thank you again to everybody,